Welcome once again to another My Fox Tech podcast, TFR, episode number 3. Tech for the rest of us. Yes, that is for the rest of you, not just for the people who speak in a language that very few can understand. And today, I'm also excited because this is our pre-Memorial Day tech for the rest of us. We're going to get into, at the end, some things because there are going to be sales galore. And you may not like to go clothes shopping, but you may like to run around Best Buy and shop and window shop and then go online and buy whatever you're seeing at Best Buy. So, Russell Holly, Juan Carlos Bagnell, Geek.com, YourTechReport.com, also joining me today. Thank you, gentlemen. Anybody have any grand plans for the weekend, for Memorial Day weekend?
I'm actively going to try and not set myself on fire this year.
I like that you're going to be active and trying not to do that.
And last year I had a grill blow back at me and it burned my arm and like part of one of my eyebrows. So this year I'm going to not do that. Okay, that'll be a good thing. What about you, Juan?
I'm going to try and do nothing, and it will be everything I hoped it could be.
Awesome. Well, speaking of everything we hoped it could be, CTIA.
Oh, no.
How has that been? Was it everything you hoped it would be, Juan?
All right, so first off, CTIA isn't really an event geared towards consumer stuff. It's not like a CES, but There's a lot of consumer stuff that gets talked about at CTIA. This year was a little quiet. We were on the CTIA show floor when the Xbox One announcement hit, and all of us bloggers kind of went, well, that just took all the wind out of anything we might be talking about at CTIA.
Wow.
But there were still there was still a lot of cool stuff on the ground, and for the show being a little bit smaller, there was definitely a focus on sort of device protection, ruggedized devices, power management when you're out in the field. That's not really sexy stuff to talk about. It's not like a new Galaxy smartphone was released or anything like that. But it was kind of cool to see the overall vibe pushing towards getting your phones to last a 2-year contract, getting your phones out on job sites, getting your phones to last more than just a day if you need to power them for long periods of time. Really cool stuff by Mophie had the new jacket case for the HTC One. So it's super sexy and has a battery that can deliver a full extra charge.
So it matches One's sexiness.
Oh, it's just gorgeous. Well, and if you've seen the Mophie case for the iPhone, I mean, it's just a really simple, modern, pretty case, and it does. It really matches the vibe of the HTC One. Combining that with Caterpillar was out on the show floor, and they make farm and tractor equipment, but they're licensing their brand for a new ruggedized smartphone, which is going to come in at $350. So drop-proof, shock-proof, waterproof, freeze-resistant, and it just looks all hard-edged and industrial with the black and steel and yellow look of Caterpillar farm equipment. They're going to be sending us a review unit to check out.
So I have a really funny story about that phone for later.
Oh, the Caterpillar, the B15?
Yes. Yeah. So this is actually something that they...
Oh, no, just jump in now. Let's do this.
I am going to jump in.
Bring it.
Otherwise, it's not going to work. I'll forget. So I actually met the guy who, the CEO of Caterpillar at CTIA, and when it was in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
And he had 2 different concepts for this phone that he was walking around and using. It wasn't the B15 yet, but he had a flip phone version that was heavy, and then he had a touchscreen, candy bar that he was messing with as concepts for the phone that you saw. We are in downtown New Orleans, and somebody asked him why he thought that his phone was more rugged than anybody else's. We are surrounded by 250 people, walking down the street in downtown New Orleans. This guy stops short and throws the phone up 40 feet in the air and just watches as it just smashes on the ground, and nothing happens to it. He picks it up, dusts it off, and he looks at the guy. He goes, "Are you satisfied?" And so for the next 20 minutes, he keeps doing other things to it to see if we're satisfied, including dropping it into a pitcher of beer 20 minutes later.
That's awesome.
And just letting it sit there. So
that's
well, one of the reviews, one of the on-air reviews that I did here during our 5 p.m. news broadcast at Studio 11 LA it's still one of the most successful ones I've done, and it was Samsung's Rugby.
Yep.
Now, while many of us in the tech industry may look at some of these ruggedized phones and go, ho hum, this is big stuff for anybody who has a child that they're buying a smartphone for. Because I can't tell you how many parents have said, I've gone through phones because my child was at a pool party and somebody pushed them into the pool with their phone in their back pocket. This is a big deal.
Or I can't tell you the number of things I've sold for Samsung and Kyocera just by, letting a nephew play with the phone. It gets all sticky and covered in Cheetos. And then while the phone is on, you just run it under a sink to clean it off.
Yep.
Parents flip out over that stuff. So I know they're sort of designed for job site. They all have that rugged, like old school Nextel vibe going on.
Right.
But this is I like this trend in ruggedizing devices. Like I'm going to be really excited to play with the Galaxy S4, the rugged version, the Active or whatever they're calling it. Right. Just because these are devices that are more likely to actually last your 2-year contract. You don't have to worry about babying them. You can throw them into like my wife's purse, which is notorious for destroying phones, and feel pretty confident that they'll survive.
Well, my sons cracked their computer screen last night, so I can't wait till I can get some Gorilla Glass on a laptop cheap enough to give to my sons that they can leave on the floor and climb out of their bed and step on top of.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times. My son even text messaged me. Before I got home, I get this text that says, Dad, we cracked the screen. And then when I talked to him, he's like, I just wanted to text message you and let you know. So he was trying to let me down. So before you got in the house and saw it, I just wanted you to know that it was cracked. He's like, I take full responsibility, Dad. I'm like, well, if you take full responsibility, then I can't I can't groan about anything because you just took responsibility, and that's what I want you to do. So, all right. We'll deal with it.
But that's some good character right there. You're doing your job, man.
Yeah, he's doing his job, so I can't be mad at him for that. Plus, I have the protection plan at Best Buy, which is actually a pretty good one, so I'm not worried about it. I'm glad I bought it now. Better to have it than not need it. They need it, not have it. But what else did you see at CTIA? So you're saying CTIA, the biggest things you saw this year were all about kind of, it sounds like
for
aftermarket accessory, really just rounding out the phones.
And this is again because of the nature of the show that we're working on here. This is more the consumer focus on that.
Right.
CTIA is definitely more about the wireless industry. So there were some really interesting booths on wireline services, backhaul services, companies that are really trying to push. There was some cool med tech stuff where once areas can roll out with higher speed infrastructures. Being able to do remote medical consultations, remote surgeries, some really cool robotic stuff. But for the consumer side, the pickings were a little slimmer. It was a little quieter this year.
Right.
And the general focus seemed to be how can you get your device to last the day, and how can you get your device to last your contract?
Well, and that's important, I think. I mean, maybe, you might want to...
And very cool.
Another one.
And especially as opposed to just going to booths where it's nothing but rows and rows and rows of, just generic rubber bumper cases for phones. We were seeing some really creative stuff for accessories and, battery management.
Right. Well, management. I think that's a good time to segue into our next topic here. Speaking of management, a new device, or a much anticipated device, a hotly anticipated device, I should say, was launched this week, which endeavors to manage everything in your living room. It wants to be everything. As a matter of fact, it wants to be everything so much so that they named it the One. Xbox One.
Microsoft I thought you were going to say HTC.
Well, that's a different one. That one also wants to be the One. Alongside Xbox's One, but Xbox wants to be the one in your living room.
Oh, so this is the hotly anticipated sequel to Highlander, then?
Yeah, exactly. Just the One.
I can't wait to use my One to control my One. It's really going to be a thrilling experience.
While watching Duncan McLeod.
That's exactly right.
I'm going to invite Exhibit in so he can say, yo, dog, I heard you like ones. So I got your One so you can enjoy your One while you're having fun.
He hates that.
Yeah, yes, he does. Yeah. We had him in the hangout one day, and we asked him about that. And he said, first off, I never say yo dog.
Even if he did before, he certainly doesn't
He
anymore.
was like, no, that's a
Right.
Randy Jackson thing. He was like, he said, I don't know where that came from because I don't say yo dog. But the Xbox One, there were people speculating there was going to be the Xbox 720, there was going to be all these other names. So we have the Xbox One, which personally I've been telling parents about since like 2009 that Microsoft was really on this agenda to unify and converge everything so that you're literally just moving from one space to the next and everything's unified. And also in your living room, that they were trying to kind of become the home theater PC, console, gaming, Xbox, cable box, everything. So what did you guys think about the announcement? What do you think was the meat of that announcement that people listening, that consumers should be excited about? And then we'll get into the things that maybe are not so exciting, potentially, after that. Either one. Jump on in there.
I guess, the most exciting thing for me is that, it's going to be the thing that you interact with, regardless of whether it's your television or your game console or, trying to surf the internet or anything like that. If you're interacting with your TV, Microsoft wants it to be through the Xbox One, even if it's not necessarily interacting with the Xbox One. They want it to be through the Xbox One. So they start that off with the HDMI pass-through. So your cable box or your TiVo or however you get your digital input is going to go through the Xbox into the television, so that even if you decide that you're not going to play games, the Xbox is on, it's running, and it is where it's aware of your viewing habits. It's aware of the channels that you're watching, and it uses that to suggest additional content and just kind of be generally more aware of what it is that you're doing.
Now I can tell you, in my own home, our Xbox 360 gets about as much time being used for Netflix as it does for gaming.
Same here.
Yep.
And in fact, I would say for me, it's probably 70-30 now. Like watching movies and streaming TV to actually gaming. It's like the thing is constantly on. No, this is definitely like what's exciting about this is it's the realization of what Microsoft has been working on since Windows XP Media Center edition, where they weren't able to convince people to put computers in their living rooms, but game consoles were the perfect Trojan horse to get in there and achieve that functionality. In terms of the actual demonstration, I just gotta say props to Microsoft for actually showing us the box. Like Sony, where we just sort of have to imagine what a potential PS4 might look like.
We have a really blurry video of what it looks like now.
Oh, that's right.
We don't know. We do. Juan is referring to when Sony did their big event and didn't actually show the hardware.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, they showed us a controller, so that
was 2.5 hours. They were on stage for 2.5 hours showing game trailers, talking about how the social stuff works, showed us the controller, and then at the very end, where any other sane press conference would have been
Jonas.
Reveal the curtain, everyone gets to go play with the stuff. They just, boom, shut everything down, get out.
Oh, just shocking. Not even a render of what the box is. But during the announcement, I think one of the things that I was most excited about, I mean, in terms of the gaming stuff, was Activision's graphics demo, which was looking really cool for what their next generation engines are going to look like for like Call of Duty and games like that. I thought that was a really simple and a really clean way to show off what the newer capabilities of this box might look like.
Well, one of the things that was exciting for me and that I actually shared with my children, because they were in school when it happened, so they didn't get to see it, was the integration with Kinect, and the fact that he showed where you're actually watching a video and you can minimize the video back to the menu screen by doing this totally Minority Report kind of move here and grab the screen and squeeze it back into position.
Yep.
And one thing we've seen in consumer technology, and I forget, the CEO of Jawbone has spoken about this, and obviously Steve Jobs was a huge stickler for this, and that's experience. And it may not be a big deal to some people in the tech community to have these little things, but I'm telling you, children coming up and people who are not huge tech evangelists, to be able to grab the screen and minimize it in the air like that, those little touches are going to be those things that put them over the top on people's Christmas lists, I think.
Well, and that's what puts the Xbox 360 over the PlayStation 3, in my opinion, right now. I mean, I have both of those consoles sitting on sitting on the shelf under my entertainment center right now. But the PS3 doesn't usually get turned on. The menu system is really complicated. It's constantly in need of updates. It's when I go to play a PlayStation 3 game, it's a lot of fun. But if I want to watch Netflix or something like that, I always go to my 360 because the user interface is pleasing. It's visually, very successful. They've done a great job with that. And the Xbox One is an absolute evolution of that. They pull the best things from Windows 8 and, put it right in, where it belongs, reaching out and doing things with your hands. The very first thing that I said when I saw Windows 8 for the first time was, man, I wish I could, just reach out and instead of physically touching the screen, just, wave my hand through the air with the Kinect. Right. And that's exactly what they've created here. So it's really powerful, I think, that they've merged all of that together.
I think Leap is going to beat Microsoft.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Yeah, Leap is definitely going to take over the TV.
About some interesting things going on with them in Windows 8. So I think they're definitely ones to watch in that space.
I'd be really surprised if Microsoft didn't make a play to option Leap at
some
point, or at least that tech, because it would make so much more sense for desktop computers to have that kind of integration than having touchscreens, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, yep. Right at the end of the keyboard, just reach out and totally.
But I was curious to know what you guys thought of Kinect, sort of, because we've talked about this in the last 2 episodes of having sort of pervasively on devices. The first thing my wife said when she saw the announcement on the Xbox One was she had a concern that means the Xbox is always sort of on. Like it's always listening for, Xbox on, or just something. So it's always sort of monitoring what's happening even when the box is off, technically.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And we have talked about this a couple of times, and it's definitely something that is always listening. And as long as Microsoft is responsible with that, then I don't think it's going to be a big deal. What I do find as kind of the counter to that, though, is the number of people that had problems watching this presentation from their Xbox. I don't know if you guys were looking at this on Twitter, but there was a huge number of people. Every time he said like Xbox Home or Xbox, anytime he said Xbox, if you were in like a small room that wasn't properly calibrated to the Kinect sensor, then the stream would stop and it would go to the Kinect menu. And that's just a symptom of being in a living room with a conversation and you say the word Xbox and the Xbox powers on. That would kind of bug me. So it's really how they implemented it and how responsible they are with it.
Because the current Kinect. I was just going to say the current Kinect is basically as smart as a clapper, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so we've seen these features, and some of these things were highlights, and definitely the fact that you can even control your cable box by calling out the name of a channel you'd like to switch to. These are things that I think will make a lot of consumers very happy with their purchase if we're just talking about those features. But also, this is going to bring some of the cloud into our use of gaming and the system. Now, a lot of these details have not been released yet, so what we have right now is rumors, some speculation. There was an article released today that actually talked about how they're going to handle used games. We don't know if the information in that article is dead on. I know that from my own household, used games are the majority of our games because I have sons, and they'll buy a brand new game. They'll get a brand new game for birthday or Christmas. Once they're done with it, they'll trade it in and go get a couple used games, or they'll trade with friends. And when we have older systems, when we move to the newer system, they'll take the older system and swap that for a bunch of used games. So that's really a big deal for us. And I know in speaking to a lot of parents, it's been a really big deal for them because obviously a parent would like to spend $20 or $30 on a game that's been out for a couple months as opposed to $65 to pre-order. One of the things they've said is that you may have to actually have Microsoft log all these used games where, if you switch a game with somebody, it's going to have to be registered on their Xbox. And that might make it a little harder for many average users, parents who are helping their sons and children out with their daughters with Xbox. What do you guys think about some of the scuttlebutt going around about how they're going to implement some of these cloud features?
I think it's impossible for me to be judgmental about it because I don't buy a ton of used games. It's really just I've always been the kind to grab a collector's edition and I keep the collector's item for whatever it is, and that's just kind of always been my thing. But I also buy a lot of digital games, which you can't trade in anyway. So
Right.
it's always kind of been separate for me. But I have worked in a GameStop, and I know plenty of people who trade games, and it's a massive industry.
Yes.
And I think that anything that Microsoft does to create steps in between the act of either selling or buying a used game is going to cause problems. If they can find a way, and the rumors seem to be suggesting that this is how it's going to be, if they can find a way so that this agreement, where they are making money on the second sale or something to that effect, the registration process and all of that, if that happens on a retail level, where it becomes the retail person's responsibility to manage that kind of thing and not the user, then I don't see it being a huge problem. But the second you increase the amount of steps
Right.
for either side of this process, be it selling or buying games, then there's going to be a significant drop in that ecosystem, and I think that'll be a problem.
Right.
And also, this is just kind of interesting in the way that this is being timed out, because I really do feel that this is the last generation of consoles where the majority of people's game buying habits are going to be on shiny plastic discs. We don't have these kinds of conversations with a service like Steam.
Right.
And plenty of PC gamers seem to get along just fine with the way that they do business with a company like Steam. And so now it's just sort of getting the rest of that industry, because the console industry being as big as it is, just away from that expectation that their game lives on a shiny piece of plastic. The game is licensed in a way that their account is allowed to play with it. And
Right.
I think that's sort of the teething pains of this living room technology that we're seeing in action right now.
Yeah, because there were plenty of people who were unhappy when people moved to Steam, and when places like GameStop and Power Gamer and places like that stopped carrying used PC games. There were
Right.
plenty of people who were upset about that when it happened, and it took pretty much a whole generation of games for that to completely phase out. And when it did, it's everyone's moved on, everyone's accepted it. So
Right.
it'll be interesting to see. I think you're right. Juan. I think that the same thing will happen with the console generation. I think that they're just a whole generation behind because consoles are a whole generation behind.
Right.
So I think that that's just the nature of this particular industry.
I would say the one concern I have is that Microsoft finds that magnanimous edge. Like one of the things that really helped Steam was finding their niche in how to do sales on games, and now people go nuts whenever there's a sale on Steam, and how you can gift games. So when I got the orange box, I replicated my copy of Half-Life 2. So I was able to gift that to someone else. It's like those little services, those little side services that make shop. I think once Microsoft nails some of those down, we won't even hear about this used game problem anymore. But it'll probably take a good generation of gaming for that to happen, for Microsoft to figure out how they're going to go about those kinds of services.
Well, and I think right now that there are a lot of companies that are going through the process of finding a fine-tuning and finding an audience, or fine-tuning services, fine-tuning products. And something else we were going to talk about today is the Galaxy Note 8.0. This is kind of Samsung's continued effort to put out something in every size imaginable, so that once they find the market that catches on, then they can go ahead and, I guess, go full bore, as if they're not already. I mean, a lot of people laughed at the Note 2 when it first came out. I'm sorry, the Note. But I actually really liked it when it first came out.
Oh, yeah.
But it got a lot of negative reviews, but it caught on. and people really
I
bought
thought
it.
the negative reviews were hysterical because by the time everyone was getting their negative review out, the thing had already sold like 5 million units.
Oh yeah, yep. It was already huge, but and what was funny was that some of them then turned around and wrote, separate things.
Right.
Why have you people allowed this to happen by spending your money? Why can't you have the same opinion as me and say that it's terrible?
BGR, I'm looking in your general direction.
Yeah.
And wagging fingers. So I picked this up. I toured did the whole Samsung Experience tour yesterday, and so they were giving out Samsung Galaxy S4s and the Note 2, Note 8.0. I call it the Note 2 mistakenly because it really does just look like a giant Galaxy Note.
Hilarious to say that it looks like a giant phone.
And the funny thing is to say it just looks like a big Note 2 is the exact same thing people were saying about the iPad when it first came out. Oh, it's nothing but a giant iPhone. And now here we are with the Galaxy Note 8.0.
Yeah, the Galaxy Note 8.0 is beautiful. I have a Note 10.1 in my kitchen that I use all the time just because, just the perfect combination of, being able to reach over and touch the screen when I need it, grab the pen when I need it. Samsung software does a pretty decent job. And the Note, particularly the stylus interactions on the larger screen, it doesn't feel as comfortable. I'm not as happy carrying it around places, but the 8 is fantastic, because it doesn't quite fit in your back pocket like, maybe a Nexus 7 or an iPad mini, but it is perfect for carrying around without feeling bulky. You can participate in, like Hangouts or anything like that, with ease. It's plenty powerful. I'm actually kind of sad that the US version doesn't make phone calls.
Yeah.
But otherwise, a great tablet all around, I think.
Juan, and you've had some time with the 8.0, I believe.
Yeah, it's actually at my editor-in-chief's house right now, so I'm not able to reference it like you were here. Not that anyone can see us, but no, I was very impressed. I completely agree with what Russell said. As opposed to the Galaxy Note 10, this really does feel like that uber mobile, sketchpad, notepad kind of device. Definitely, a step above what you could do with the Nexus 7. Little odd quirks. I do really wish that we had the ability to make phone calls, but then also the Note 8 lacks NFC. And I know that's not going to be a huge deal for people out there, but it's one of those features that I really love, especially with my devices at home, being able to tap and share stuff. So I was a little disappointed by that. I think the one challenge Samsung has is its price point.
Right.
Considering you could buy 2 Nexus 7s for the price of one Note 8, it's kind of a curious place where they've positioned it, where it's even more expensive than the iPad Mini. That's a little tricky. I'm not saying it's bad, and I definitely think there's an audience for it, and I definitely think people will gravitate towards its more premium experience over a Nexus 7, but that is something that a lot of people have expressed some sticker shock over.
Right, but you think once they get the device in hand, it'll be an enjoyable experience once they get the S Pen and using all the
totally
built-in the TouchWiz there.
Oh, completely, and really my only nit, and this is stupid nitpicky here. My only other critique of the device is the ergonomics are a little funny having dedicated hardware buttons for a device that you will often use in landscape. And so, depending on how you're holding it, I occasionally would thumb over the back button at times where I didn't want to do that, especially while playing games and stuff like that. If that's the biggest complaint I can levy against the device, I mean, you're doing really well. I mean, the screen's gorgeous, the cameras are functional for what they are, the audio is great off of those little stereo speakers. I mean, it's definitely a high quality premium experience. But there are a few little nitpickies that people will have to consider for how the device might fit into their usage.
I've had it for about 24 hours myself, and I guess one of the things I really have an issue with is that there's no flash, because if I'm really going to carry this around all the time with me, as I may, I really would like the option to be able to have the flash if I need it. It's not a huge deal breaker because I think at this point we've gotten used to having tablets that don't have flashes on the back of them, so you kind of expect to use your phone in any low lighting situation.
Shocker, are you one of those people who takes pictures with your tablet?
What's in a blue moon? It's so infrequent that I really shouldn't be complaining about it. But I'm also one of those guys who's totally about it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
All right.
I'd like to have a flash. Other than that complaint, I really like the fact that it has the IR port. Anybody who's been around Google Plus and knows me a little bit knows that I am an IR nerd, and really I was so saddened by the fact that many devices did not have IR ports on them for a long time.
Well, explain what the IR port gives you, because I am also a big fan of having the infrared blaster on it.
So the IR port, IR blaster, is a little port, and it's actually on the side, which I thought was interesting placement and not the top of the device, because a lot of times I think, actually the remote control app is like this, so it makes sense from that perspective. But I'm so used to like IR ports being on the top that it just seemed awkward. Now that I think about it, it makes sense. But anyway, the IR port is when you're using a remote control, that little thing that you're pointing the remote at your TV, you now have that built into the Note 8.0, so you can use their built-in remote apps. I think it's called Peel TV, and they have some other things where you can actually control your TV without having to buy a third-party accessory to allow you to control your cable box, your TV, what have you. I haven't set it up and played with it yet. On the HTC one, it was a joy. It was so easy to set up and so easy to use. So hopefully the Note 8.0 follows suit with that. But I have to say, I have to agree with you guys. I really do like it. It's refined. It's a really nice device. I'm a little spoiled now because I've been using that Chromebook Pixel for a while. So all the screens I get are like
anything that doesn't have that display.
Yeah, I look at this screen. I was looking at last night and I'm going, this display. Now, remind you, this is relative to something else. I'm like, this display just doesn't look that sharp. It's just not as crisp. But when you're staring at the Chromebook Pixel all the time, it really does kind of put displays in a little bit different light. So that's uber nitpicky, I know. But if you're thinking about the Note 8.0, I had somebody on Google Plus ask me today, I want to get rid of my N7, my Nexus 7. Should I go with the Note 8.0? And my answer to that is if you're looking at tablets right now, this weekend, Memorial Day sales, if you're looking at tablets, the top 3 I think you should be looking at that you're going to find most accessible in stores, because that's where most people are going to be shopping in stores for all the in-store deals. Some of you I know will still shop online, but the iPad mini, I shudder at that. I'm not an Apple hater, but the iPad mini, the Note 8.0, the Nexus 7 is always a very good option, although you might want to hold off because there's some scuttlebutt that we may see a refresh on the Nexus 7.
Well, I think it would make sense because the first Nexus was announced the end of June last year, the beginning of July, something like that. Mm-hmm. So the timing is pretty close to where if we're going to see a refresh on the Nexus lineup, that it would be coming pretty soon. So I would say if you're going to go shop a small form factor tablet, I think the top 2 would be the iPad mini, which I also agree it's not my favorite tablet, and the Galaxy Note 8.
So I'm the only one who really likes the iPad mini here, huh?
You know what? I'm never gonna say that the iPad mini is a bad buy. I'm never gonna say that. But couple little things about the iPad mini make me nervous about like long-term software support. iPad 2 users might also be concerned about the fact that the guts are so similar. What does that mean for future updates for iOS? Like, will it be getting iOS 8 updates if the iPad 2 probably won't be getting iOS 8 updates? And then also, this is, and you want to talk about nitpicky? Oh, Russell, you're going to love this. The most nitpicky criticism I can levy at the iPad mini is without a case, that thing is very difficult to pick up off of a table without sliding it around.
Do you not use
a sleek? Likes the mini. What do you? So
it's so sleek, it's so slim. It's hard to pick up off a table.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I dig the iPad mini. It was actually my first Apple tablet. I mean, I had used an iPad. I'd used a bunch of different iPads, but I'd never gone and purchased one for myself. I'm an Android user for most of the things that I do, but for the iPad mini, I travel a lot, and so having that smaller screen, really just kind of for entertainment. Was a big deal to me. You know, it's kind of an inexpensive, or comparatively inexpensive nice, thin, decent battery life, and I found myself using it for everything. After a couple of days, I realized that I just carried it around with me everywhere and used it for all kinds of things. I do notice that it's a little difficult to pick up, but I have a smart cover for it. And as like a really, side thing that I don't think anybody else would ever actually do, the smart cover, the magnets are strong enough that I can hang it off on my range. So when I'm in the kitchen, I hang it off my range.
That's cool though.
Yeah, it's really cool. Everyone keeps telling me it's going to fall, it's going to shatter, and I'm going to be sad, but it hasn't happened yet. So
you know what set up permanent residence in my kitchen now? The HP touchpad.
Yeah.
It has become my kitchen computer. It's like I keep it synced up with Google Docs for all of my recipes and stuff. It only does that now.
Sometimes I wonder how many people actually have kitchen computers and why there aren't more of them.
Oh, man. Oh, it's great. And because, I got it during the fire sale. It's hard to be upset if you get, bolognese sauce on a $100 tablet.
Yeah.
Well, this weekend there will also be a bunch of other items that'll be on sale, I'm sure, from laptops, tablets, smartphones. So, Russell, somebody's out there, they're looking for a smartphone, they've got their upgrade, Memorial Day sales are hitting. What would be your top 3 devices you'd recommend to people to get?
Well, I'll break it down by carrier. If you're on T-Mobile, I would say that the HTC One's probably the best one that you can go for. If you're on Verizon, I would say that you probably want to go with the Galaxy S4, and for AT&T, I would say that the Galaxy S4 is probably your best way to go. But if you're on Sprint, Sprint is supposed to be having some really, really great sales on. I'm sorry, I got those confused. Sprint, I would also say the S4, but on AT&T, the LG Optimus G Pro.
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of. Is just a really, really great phone, but it's only on AT&T. So I would recommend that. I'm sure that that's one of the phones that they're going to throw up on sale over this next weekend. And if you really just don't want to spend a ton of money, I hear that AT&T is looking to take HTC firsts and just shovel them out the door by the box load. So you probably get those for pretty cheap too if you're looking for just a really inexpensive Android phone.
Penny, for your thoughts. Juan Bagnell?
Russell took my answer. No, seriously, especially when we're talking about the carriers, if you're not going with some sort of prepay, the LG Optimus G Pro has seriously impressed. We just posted for the entire lineup of AT&T phones, the radios on the LG Optimus G Pro blew away pretty much every other phone in their lineup for download speeds on LTE. Surprisingly, on the CTIA show floor, we found a little pocket of LTE that was cranking 50 megabit downloads, and the LG cranked a couple 70s. And you're like, we're in the middle of the Sands Convention Center, pulling down ridiculously fast data. So it was pretty impressive performance from LG's phablet. Okay,
and when we were at an AT&T mobile review, and I had a few minutes to play with the Optimus G Pro. And it, for me, interesting enough, because I'm such a big fan of the Note, it was like the Note, but with a couple other refinements that I actually really liked. So I think you're spot on. That is definitely a good choice. I'm going to say for those of you who are making the switch to prepaid or making the switch to the uncontract carrier, which is a relative term, because if you buy the phone and finance it, you're still locked in for 2 years just on phone pricing. But the Nexus 4... I think is still a great purchase if you're moving over to one of those carriers, because you're going to get that for $300 as opposed to $500 or $600 or $700 even if you pay outright and not the extra $20, 20 some odd dollars a month. But other than that, I completely agree with you guys. The One is obviously awesome, and the SGS4 and the LG Optimus G Pro, great devices. We had something else, but I have to find this. Where did I put this? We have to actually go ahead.
Real quick, while you're looking for whatever it is that you're looking for, the other thing that I would also mention, if you're looking at T-Mobile and you're shopping a very entry level handset or a like a first phone for a kid, I was very impressed with the Lumia 521. It means having to jump over to Windows Phone, but you can buy that thing outright, not subsidized, off contract for $150. And if you can find it on Walmart.com, it's regularly being sold for around $130. And it's definitely an entry-level device. It's not going to be a premium device or a premier device, but considering that you own it for $150, it's a compelling entry to the low end segment.
And I'm going to take it one step further and say, if you're talking about buying it for a child, for somebody who may not yet be contributing to the income of your household, $130 to $150 is a very compelling purchase for a purchase that's done outright. And especially if you're talking child, they don't have all the same. They're not as jaded as we are. So putting them on Windows Phone 8, honestly, I've given it to my daughter, and it wasn't a big deal. I gave her an old Arrive, and other than the phone was kind of falling apart and it was time to get a new one, she really didn't have a whole lot of complaints about using that operating system. I never heard her go, "Oh, well, Dad, I don't like the fact that I can't connect this to my desktop and sync with Microsoft Outlook," or, we never heard those complaints.
Right.
So for a younger person, that's definitely great. And I just want to get through a couple other topics here real quick. Verizon Cloud, something that they announced that's their version of like Dropbox. This is cloud storage. So we hear the cloud all the time. A lot of iPhone users iCloud. This is, as I've explained to some people, this is the cloud storage is essentially an external hard drive, or like an external hard drive or flash drive, but it lives somewhere wirelessly. And your phone, your laptop, your device connects to that external hard drive or flash drive wirelessly and allows you to back up or store data, stream music, movies, a bunch of other different things. And Verizon is now offering this service, but at a premium that puts it a little higher than some of the other services currently available. What do you guys think? Verizon users, should they be flocking to Verizon Cloud instead of Dropbox or Box or any of these other services that offer the same type of platform?
I'm gonna say no. And it's really a matter of convenience. What makes the Verizon Cloud convenient is that it can be shared. It feels more like a corporate appliance than it does for individual users. Individual users can use it and, like you said, get the same experience they get out of Dropbox. But in a small business or a corporate environment, or even just a project between friends, what makes it useful is how efficiently it syncs between the different accounts. And the tools that are available between the different accounts, especially the ability to pull down and plug into things like Microsoft Word and some of the other features that are there. So if you're already on Dropbox or Box.net or Google Drive and you're already happy with those services, I don't think that there's a reason to go. If you've been considering it and not sure, you've got it, so it doesn't hurt to use it.
Right.
But I don't think that it'll provide the same experience. I don't think it'll be as good, overall. But again, that's kind of coming from a power user's perspective, so it's kind of subjective.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with Russell. It's for me. I think I would just have a wait and see approach before I would start putting, because AT&T also has, what is their cloud locker? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
They have their cloud solution as well. The problem with these is it's not just the storage space that you get. It's the fact that companies like Box and Dropbox have had years to refine how their service interacts with a variety of different devices. And so especially like on Android, because Android already has really great file management, your ability to sync back and forth with proper computers, smartphones, and tablets over Dropbox is unparalleled right now, especially from the consumer perspective. Also, I think it was one of the smaller stories on CTIA is that Box is looking to partner with AT&T to offer other expanded business solutions for business customers. So I think this move from Verizon is smart in that they need to start looking at what services they can offer. Like, they can't just end up being a big dumb pipe to the internet. They need to be a services company. But I'm going to say wait and see. I'm not going to say rush out and start using this as a mainline corporate solution, or even a backup solution for home users, until you're familiar with what your individual needs are for online storage and home integration.
Alrighty, well, and that's something we'll get into, I think, another episode. Home integration, that just sparked off a whole.
We could talk for hours about that one.
And especially AT&T is rolling things out, Verizon, Home Connect. So maybe you who are listening may not know about that yet, but if you don't, you're definitely listening to the right podcast because we are going to inform you. That's what we do. Specifically, Russell Holly at Russell Holly on Twitter, Juan Carlos Bagnell at Some Audio Guy on Twitter. We're here to help out. I'm at Tashaka Armstrong. And thank you guys for joining us again for the third installment. And I'm going to stop counting at some point because I just want them to be so numerous we don't even remember the numbers of Tech for the Rest of Us. Hashtag TFR. You can find the podcast. We're on SoundCloud. We're on iTunes. Download us. Listen to us. Take us home to meet the folks. They'll love us. I promise you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.